Hello everybody, my name is Marta Benach and I'm going to be talking to you today about managing application releases in the modern cloud-based software factory. So what I'd like to talk to you about today is first the state of the cloud. I want to talk about challenges delivering in the cloud, the CA Continuous Delivery Cloud ecosystem, our CA Continuous Delivery Director product, which is a release management and planning solution, and then I'll take any questions that you happen to have. So right now, most enterprises are doing something in the cloud today. 90% of enterprises, wow, that's pretty loud. 90% of enterprises are using at least one form of cloud, right? And 80% of the IT budgets are committed to cloud within the next year, right? So this means that there's a lot of interest in the cloud, and there's a lot of, companies are doing transformations where they really want to start moving off-premise and into the cloud. So it's pretty pervasive. But a lot of them lack a cohesive cloud strategy. So really, out of those 90% of people that are interested in the cloud, only 15% really have a mature strategy. Within each company itself, there's a lot of different cloud vendors, right? So you have multiple teams using different cloud vendors. So again, it's kind of Wild West style. And that they also don't have the resources and the expertise available within the cloud platforms to actually develop a cohesive strategy. So some of the challenges that our customers are seeing is, I like to build them all out at once. Whoops. So they don't want to have vendor lock-in, right? There's a lot of different vendors out there that you have, and as the cost of cloud increases, right, you want to have the flexibility to move your applications into different vendors, right? So you definitely don't want to say, right, I'm down with AWS and I can't go anywhere else, because that's not really good for your bottom line, right? Cloud platforms are really good and they understand what they themselves are deploying and what's in the platform, but they don't have visibility outside of their platform. So you don't have an end-to-end visibility across your release pipeline, right? So there's no release management within the cloud vendor itself. Heterogeneous environments, right, which is where we see most of the direction right now. Very few people are all cloud. There's a lot of on-prem and hybrid environments, right? Your cloud applications and platforms need to talk to your on-premise systems, right? There's no way around that. So that is not always easy to do. We're also dealing with new applications, right, where we have re-architected applications, we have new data models, we have evolving languages, and new infrastructures like containers and things like that, which we really need to understand how we're doing this new development. And lastly, when we have legacy testing models, they don't scale when you're doing cloud application delivery. You really need to be doing continuous testing when you're deploying out into the cloud, and that's very difficult to do with these old models like manual testing and things like that. So in addition to moving to the cloud and getting this cloud, kind of having this shift cloud transition, if you combine that with DevOps, right, you're going to get an 81% improvement in your software delivery performance. So it's not just moving to a cloud platform, it's really the combination of cloud and DevOps. So Continuous Delivery Director, right, it's basically a mission control for cloud shift. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is that we can abstract your release process from the platform itself, so you're not locked into a specific cloud provider, right? So we're able to do the application, the release models. We can do consistent deployments to cloud vendors. So if you're doing public cloud testing, right, but you're still doing your production on-premise, you can actually manage that within the same release pipeline with Continuous Delivery Director. We can do that ever important connection of talking from the SAS platform out into the on-premise systems. We're also able to speed up those testing cycles because we're doing continuous testing within Continuous Delivery Director. And we actually have a very cool new thing that I'm showcasing over in the demo pods called Test Asset Repository. So it's all about continuous testing. We also want to be basically DevOps toolchain agnostic because we know there's a lot of players out there and they're changing all the time and they're evolving. And you guys want to use the tools. One, you're already using certain tools. You might even have different teams using different tools within your organization. And we want to be able to accommodate that. We don't want to invent new work or have you do rework. The last thing is that when you're doing all of your application deployments and your releases, there's a lot of conflict that's happening, right? There's a lot of dependencies that need to be managed, right? You have conflicts, and particularly if you have a lot of parallel release pipelines, right? Managing all of that becomes a kind of a headache. So CA Continuous Delivery Director has two offerings. The first is an on-premise offering, right? So basically, the on-premise offering and the SaaS offering are feature parity, right? So it's the same code base for both of these systems. The SaaS offering is generally going to be updated first because that is the nature of SaaS, and that's one of the reasons people do want to move to SaaS platforms in the cloud, right? Is the ability to get the new shiny new features, faster than possible. They don't want to wait for however long it takes to put out a new on-premise release. So they do match up. So all of the CI/CD components between the on-premise and the SaaS, they're equivalent. For customers that are working towards a new cloud strategy, if you're in transition, you might want to start with the on-premise, right? Because you're more comfortable. You don't have a mature model yet. You don't have a mature cloud model. So the on-premise might work for you. But if you're basically in transition, or if you're a kind of a total born digital style, you guys already high impact into cloud, right? It's really easy to get started with the SaaS platform. So if you actually go to cddirector.io on your web browser, you can sign up for our SaaS platform. It's very easy. You can use Gmail or GitHub to sign in, and you can get started. We have a freemium edition, which is once you sign up, you can have 2 free releases. So basically, when you map out your release pipeline, you can run 2 releases at the same time, which is free. We want you to come on over and try it out. So some of the core capabilities for CD Director are model-based release planning and scheduling. So the idea here is that you can model your release pipeline, you can plan it so you can set your dates, and so you understand when you're planning to deploy into your production environments or even into your lower level environments like your dev, your QA, integration, governance, controls, and standards, right? So you have basically a record of every single release that you're doing within your organization. So you have great governance and you have great control over what's being deployed and where. It's a DevOps collaboration enhancer, so that means that multiple stakeholders can be using CD Director, right? And that we built CD Director for exactly that purpose, right? Because we know that there are many different teams that are involved in the process of putting out release to production. So we wanted everybody to be able to know where in the pipeline we were and what was the process to get there. We also do application content tracking, so we can take those user stories that you've created, basically the business value for your release, right? So whatever user stories, features, defects that you're planning on making, we can import from Agile Central or from Jira if you wanted to, and we can track that content across the pipeline, right? So if you ever get the question, which we always get, which is, hey, you know what, when is this particular feature or user story going to be in production? You can go and find out exactly when that's planned to be, right? So it tells you the business value for the release itself. We also do dependency and conflict management. So we know that a lot of applications have dependencies on other applications, and that a lot of failures in some of your environments is, hey, I went to deploy out my application into my testing environment, but I had an unmet dependency and it failed, right? So by having the alerts and the visibility into the application dependencies, right, you can avoid those problems. We do have the full cloud environment support, which is what I'm talking about right now. And we also are interested in optimizing the pipeline, right? So it's not just about doing the release process itself, we want to take the process and make it more efficient. So the first thing is we want to do full testing orchestration. We want to be tool chain agnostic, and we want to give you advanced and actionable analytics. So what I mean by that is that we're taking these releases, and as you're doing and putting out releases, we're gathering metrics, we're gathering data, and presenting it to you so that you can find the inefficiencies in your process and use that to prioritize and address what you're next going to do to get better velocity, better speed in your pipeline. So how do we define releases in the pipeline? How do we define release pipelines in the cloud? Well, we can import apps and environments from cloud-based systems. So for example, if you have AWS and you have either Code Deploy or Elastic Beanstalk and you have environments already defined, we can actually pull those environments in with the applications. We can deploy to cloud infrastructure. So I mentioned AWS, Elastic Beanstalk, Code Deploy. We can deploy to Kubernetes. We can also deploy to SAS-based testing tools like SAS Labs, for example, BlazeMeter performance testing. We can do the connection between our on-premise systems and our SaaS systems. So we have a point of presence proxy that lets you basically talk from SaaS into your on-premise systems. The last thing is that we can run these functional API performance tests in the cloud, like I mentioned, via SAS Labs, BlazeMeters, different cloud-based platform testing tools we can do integrations with. So when we want to manage content from SaaS-based systems, I mentioned Agile Central and I also mentioned Jira. So we can import release content from these Agile planning systems. We can track the users, the stories, the features through the pipeline, and then report on that application environment content, right? So you always know where in your pipeline your content is. If we want to import in from Jira, we can do the same thing, and we can just use basically a JQL query to pull in the relevant information and data that we want to know for that particular release. So one of the things we also noticed is that we are architecting our applications in a new way, right? We don't have, we're not really making monolithic style apps anymore, right? We're really moving more towards microservices where we have the ability to basically model these microservices, define the dependencies so that things are deployed in the right order. We can create the pipeline and deploy with Kubernetes, OpenShift, AWS Lambda, and then we can also integrate with Artifactory, BintRay, S3, and Docker Registry, right? So when you're creating your artifacts in these systems, we're able to kind of integrate directly with them. We'll run our container security with tools like Twistlock, and then basically be able to monitor those Docker health, for example, with New Relic and Datadog. So the idea is that we understand that the application architecture is changing, and we want to be flexible enough to be able to work with that new architecture and model that pipeline with that new architecture in mind. We're also doing intelligent continuous testing. And what I mean by that, right, is if we think about what we're doing in our release pipeline, right, we're pulling in our content, right? Now we're maybe going to deploy into our test environments. We're going to run virtualized services, for example, if we don't happen to have back-end services available to run against. We're going to maybe deploy our testing containers. So maybe we have a bunch of Docker containers that we're going to use, maybe Selenium grids to do our testing with. So we would load our test cases and data. We're going to run those test cases. Then we're going to launch maybe functional API performance and UI tests, right? And then once we've done that, we want to make sure we go back into our tools like Agile Central and update the test case status, right? So we want to basically complete the loop back into that initial system of record to say, hey, this test failed or passed. Once we do that, we want to basically automate the sign-off, right? And then we want to be able to analyze the release health. So basically we can use our plugin with AXA to get real-time metrics on the performance of the application itself. Okay, so it finished painting. So basically, we want to be able to achieve continuous delivery across the hybrid cloud, right? Be it public, be it private, on-premise. So we want to have this loop of being able to build, test, release, and enable your teams to basically work in parallel, right, across your multiple pipelines into the cloud. So just in summary, I want to say that cloud needs cloud-agnostic CA continuous delivery director to provide visibility into the pipeline, to prevent that vendor lock-in, and to be able to deliver that continuous testing in the mixed cloud environments.